I call this August 19th, 2025 Planning and Zoning Work Session to order at 6 p.m. Please silence your devices. First on the agenda is staff comments. Will the staff please give an overview?
Thank you, Chair Griswold. Kind of just do a quick overview of the packet outlining the outcome goals for this work session. So first outcome goal is to discuss how the current parking requirements in code are positively or negatively affecting businesses and property owners within commercial zoning districts. And so on our end, what we did, we sent out 3 letters since our last meeting. One of the letters was, and they were targeted and worded differently. One letter was to our businesses in the more congested area, and so Jamie did a great job kind of walking around and talking to the local businesses. And that one was targeted more on that like paid parking piece. We were kind of curious if business owners felt like paid parking would hinder their operations moving forward, or kind of curious if like businesses were seeing like a car or 2 that was just parked out in front of their business all day long, and that was more of a hindrance maybe from the Airbnbs or whatnot. And so we did get some feedback that's in the packet there. We did send a more general letter out to the Seward Chamber of Commerce just to let them know that, hey, we've been continuing this conversation on parking, and we're just curious on some more of just the general opinions of parking regulations from the business side of things. And then this idea kind of came in late, and so we might still get some more feedback in and we can share as we continue this conversation. But we did send a letter out to all of the lot owners in our commercial zoning districts, specifically undeveloped lots, asking if any of the current parking code was a hindrance to their development ideas, and that's why their lots have maintained or continued to be undeveloped. And that one might have just got to them in the last day or 2, so I did put a caveat in there that still send us the feedback that we would share with the commission after the fact. And so we did input in the packet some of the emails that we received, which do show some concern about going in the direction of paid parking, but if anyone from the public, this outcome mainly is driven by public input, so I'd recommend kind of reaching out to the public here if they have anything to add on that specific topic. The second outcome goal is to discuss how parking requirements in commercial zoning districts could be amended to positively impact business operations, growth potential, and new development opportunities. And so a couple things in the packet to aid in this discussion is we included the response to one of the questions from the comprehensive plan survey. That question was, what concerns do you have regarding parking in the city of Seward? And so we have what people checked, and for the people that selected other concerns, those concerns are in there, which was a good read. At the request of the chair, we included data from short-term rentals and long-term rentals, and so the bar graph in the packet shows the total number of identified rentals in each zoning district, with the pie graph focusing specifically on the commercial zoning districts, comparing where those rentals occur versus like mixed-use buildings or residential dwellings. For the long-term rentals, I use that word identified intentionally, as I would not trust the long-term rental numbers, as we don't have a good way to know if a long-term rental is operating with a business license, as the same way we can monitor and regulate that with short-term rentals. And so if someone's doing a long-term rental under the table, we would have no way of knowing that. So I would guess that those numbers are off a bit. Jamie did some research into some smaller towns that have eliminated parking minimums, and so we included that packet. One takeaway I got was just a lot of nuances and the variety of parking reform ideas, and so a lot of those were highlighted in the initial presentation we did at the first work session. And then the last outcome goal is to review 2 ordinance drafts for potential parking amendment options, and so we included 2 draft ordinances in case it's helpful just to see what that might look like on paper and what some of those changes would look like. And so we're not advocating one or the other, but just thought that might be a good starting point for that part of the work session. And Courtney said she'd be happy to kind of go in detail of that if that would be helpful once we get to that. But one basically showcases the elimination of parking minimums in the rest of the commercial zoning districts, as again, Harbor Commercial and Central Business zoning districts have already eliminated parking minimums. items, and the other keeps with the current paradigm while reducing parking requirements for uses that can be found in commercial zoning districts based on our previous conversations. And the numbers we put in there were more placeholders, just used to get that conversation started. And so, yeah, in general, the commission, you often go through the packet in order of items, and we typically try to put a good flow to that. However, I think today's packet items are more meant to contribute to a discussion revolving around the outcome goals, so don't feel like we need to go through an exact order of the packet. And then, yeah, the original purpose, again, I just remind the commission was to address parking, was that we did receive feedback from some developers with apartment complexes, hotels, that those minimums are a bit excessive, and so I'm intrigued to continue the broader reform ideas, but our office also would like to present some sort of draft ordinance in front of you all in the near future, revolving around at least modifying those specific land uses so that those developers have an idea of what they're working for the next building season. And so there seemed to be some agreement with the commission on those changes, so that might be a good idea to start where the commission agrees and go from there. But that's kind of an overview of the packet and the outcome goals for today. I'll turn it over to you all.
Thank you. I do have a few questions. Were you able to come up with some numbers for my questions? And I know it's short notice, but my intent for this data was mixed-use buildings are of interest to the commission and the public. So I was curious, how many mixed-use buildings with either short-term rentals, how many are short-term rentals, and how many have long-term rentals?
Yeah, so those are on the pie chart graphs.
There's no numbers, so I don't know how many.
Right, so the percentages were used instead because the numbers of the long-term rentals, as we mentioned, are skewed because we don't have the total number of how many long-term rentals are out there. So we use the percentage to give a better analysis with what numbers we did have with the long-term rentals and short-term rentals.
Okay. And same thing for, short-term and long-term.
Chair,
Yeah.
those numbers, are they like hotel units? Like if you go to central business, you have 23, for example. 23, is that 23, that's not 23 hotel units, right? I mean, we're talking, when we talk short-term rentals, we're also talking hotel rooms, correct?
No, these are, just short-term rentals. So hotels are not classified as short-term rentals.
They're nightly rentals, yeah, okay. But, so these are like seasonal or?
Should be bed and
VRBOs
breakfast.
or
Bed and
bed and breakfast, okay.
Whole house rentals, and now accessory dwelling units can also be short-term and long-term. Any clarification or questions for staff?
No, not at this point.
Okay. I'd like to open the discussion up to the public, and if you would like to participate now or during, just raise your hand, and I'd appreciate if you would come up to the table so that the microphone can pick up your voice clearly for the audience sitting on the edges of their seats at home on YouTube. But I really appreciate having a lot of people in the audience, and we are interested in what you have to say. And if you'd like to wait, we can start discussing amongst ourselves too. Okay, just raise your hand if anything pops up as we proceed, okay? So we do have discussion questions, and we have review of 2 draft ordinances. What are the wishes of the commission? Where would you like to start?
I know we have different areas that are segmented out a little bit, but I'd like to look at just the initial drafts that we have here on the parking.
Just go right to the drafts?
I would.
Okay.
Sure.
Discussion questions, were those in our packet?
They're on page 3.
No, 3.
And Danny highlighted. the 3 questions.
Oh, those 3, okay. I thought you had
The last
additional
question
ones.
is review the 2 ordinance drafts.
Okay, yeah, I thought you had 2.
Which
So
is
thank you.
probably the core of this discussion.
Yeah, I think so.
Would you like to lead off, Claire?
Sure. You know, I think what we have is, I think we're moving in the right direction a little bit as far as analyzing, do we need to have all these, these regulations in terms of specific parking in certain areas. The one area that I particularly liked to focus was the hotels and reducing that by a percentage. I know we didn't get an exact number because there was no exact numbers recorded at the hotels, but just the review of looking at the hotels, what is out there, and how easy you can find a place to park. I think we're moving in the right direction for, I think we knocked that down to what, 0.5? Is that what, instead of 1 parking space per hotel room, it's 0.5, which I think, given what I see, obviously it's not a scientific, approach because we don't have any real numbers, but I think that's fair given what I've seen out there.
That's pretty much what we concluded at our last
Yeah.
work session. I think we,
I don't have a problem with it moving in that
Right.
direction at all,
Right.
since we actually have it on paper now.
Brendan?
Yeah, my only concern is unintended consequences. Anytime we adjust these numbers, we are potentially favoring one business or industry over others. I mean, we've already heard that the current regulations are favoring hotels over multifamily dwellings and lodging, long-term lodging. So, like everything we're doing with tweaking these numbers is really, it's actually really complicated and really hard to understand, and it's kind of like a kludge, which is why I'm definitely more in favor of the other option to just,
Get rid of them all.
I mean, we have a microcosm of no parking minimums in our town in 2 places, and it has been working for a long time. So I think expanding it to more of the city is not a bad idea.
And I agree with you on that, but the objective was to look at what the existing code, because what I'm gathering from what you're saying then is that you just want to get rid of all the code and all the separate categories,
I mean, we were talking about for commercial here, so we
Right.
have 2 options on the table in the packet, right? We have removing parking minimums for principally commercial zoning districts, or we have tweaking numbers into principally commercial districts. And of the 2 options, I'm definitely in favor of just removing them.
I don't understand your statement that we have no problems with no parking regulations. It's working in central business and harbor commercial.
Yeah.
Those are actually the 2 most congested and problematic areas that we have. And that's despite having large paid parking lots in the harbor that reserves parking for people. And still, there were lots of comments. Well, 89% of the comments in our packet said there was no parking problem as is. Take that as you may.
Can I clarify that?
Sure.
Chair, yeah, because I saw your email right before.
Uh-huh.
That, and sorry if that was not labeled correctly, but for the survey question, it's not a percentage, that's just a total number of responses.
There were 89 responses.
89 responses said I have no concerns.
89 responses.
Yeah, it's not a percentage.
Okay, well, the packet said 89%, so that's a pretty important clarification.
I don't think the packet says 89%.
Let me see what where my error is. So up at the top, it says there are no concerns, 89. Okay, so 89 people said there are no concerns.
Yeah, and I ran the numbers, you basically have to add up every single row there, and that gives you 316. So 316 total responses, 89 said I have no concerns, which is 28%.
But these other figures, do those add up to the total 316?
Yep.
So 28%? Nonetheless, it is the highest number. It's at the top. Most of the people said there were no problems.
Well, the rest of the rows are problems, you add them up, be more than...
89.
89.
This is how statistics can be, yeah. But, okay, thank you for that correction. It's not 89%. But there were many concerns about the harbor parking that we have heard, and many concerns about finding a parking space downtown, and should we have paid parking? So I don't see how you can say there's, in these two commercial zones, that we currently don't have parking requirements, if there are no problems, because there are problems. Okay?
That's a great point. I mean, there definitely are problems there, but I would say that's a policy issue in how they're implemented, and that can be fixed. It can be tweaked. What can't be fixed, what can't be tweaked, is how much land is available down there. I mean, you look at the harbor, it's literally almost all parking lots. Like, how are we going to fix that problem by building more parking there? Are we going to build parking garages? Those are very expensive. You're talking $30,000 per space. We can't afford that. The way you get out of a parking problem is by charging the appropriate price for parking. You cannot build your way out of a parking problem. That is the core essence of kind of where we are. Like, that's the core essence America's facing. Cities that have eliminated parking minimums, they have seen a decrease in the cost of housing. They've promoted the infill of undeveloped lots. They've increased cities' revenue through property tax. That can all happen, and it's kind of a demand-induced circular system where providing more parking gives you more vehicles, which requires more parking. And conversely, reducing parking gets you less vehicles, which actually reduces parking. It kind of, one leads to the other. And so what's behind it is charging for parking, because we're all paying for it. We're all paying for parking right now, where it's free. It's just a hidden cost. This is exposing it if you charge for it. And it's also not, when you don't require parking minimums, you're not putting that cost on developers or people who own that property.
I haven't seen any complaints from the non-commercial zones. Haven't seen any complaints from office residential, auto commercial, or industrial. The complaints have come from Central Business District and Harbor Commercial. So we have paid parking in Harbor Commercial, and I see that we require hotels to have off-site parking, but they're not using it. So should we be requiring hotels to use their off-site parking and not plug up the paid parking with their guests? That would clear out a whole bunch of cars, vehicles. Should we require that, as we already do, but I don't think it's enforced, to require the other big parking lot users, who are the tour boat operators, like Kenai Fjords Tours? They provide a wonderful shuttle service to off-site parking, and that clears out, their parking lot is always full. To require all the tour boat operators to shuttle their passengers away, so that we have room for our employees that work down in the harbor, and restaurants and the knick-knack shops, t-shirt shops. Should they be the ones that have access to the paid parking lot? Clear out those giant users and move them away?
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you want me to come up there?
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Andrew McKay. I'm one of the owners and operators of Meandering Mediums downtown, one of the new galleries. I'm with the paid parking deal. What concerns me though is, and this is not a problem that I face as a business owner, because we don't have employees, but I've been an employee and I understand. I've worked downtown Anchorage, I've worked downtown Seward. worked as an employee my entire life up until recently. And as a person who has grown up in Anchorage, born and raised in Anchorage, and I work downtown in Anchorage, it's not fun to have to pay for parking 8 hours out of the day. And that's what I kind of want to pitch my idea to kind of keep everything, I think, copacetic would be to possibly have a year-round resident pass that keeps our residents not breaking the bank trying to go to work every day. Make it $25 to $50 for the season or something like that. So that way, those people that are waiting tables or working their downtown 8-hour-a-day jobs, they're not having to pay to work. And that was my only concern with it. I really do think that the paid parking thing would eliminate a lot of the congestion that happens down there. I have seen a lot of the places that are Airbnbs or whatever, that the same cars parked there for 3 days in a row, and that's not I think that's not fair as well. So I think my personal opinion, the solution is to cater to our locals by giving them some kind of, year-round residents, obviously, some kind of pass to have their vehicle down there 8 hours a day, and then charge everybody else what you're planning on, what you're talking about.
So you're referring just to the downtown parking situation?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't realize we were talking about are we talking about other areas
we
for
were
parking too?
We were discussing the paid parking lot that exists in the boat harbor.
Okay.
And how there's still complaints about there's not much room, employees can't find a place to park. So I was suggesting that we offload some of the big users, the hotels and the tour boat operators, move them off of these parking lots to off-site parking lots with shuttles to free up space. And the council did make a resident pass. I think it's $50 for harbor users, because we don't have paid parking anywhere else. So it was very generous from the Y down the whole valley.
And I think that would work for downtown too,
Okay. But people are still saying, we are employees, we have no place to park in the boat harbor. But
that's my 2 cents. Thank you very
yeah, I
much.
appreciate that experience too. Did you want to correct that? Isn't it a $50 pass for?
It was when I worked
anyone?
out of the
It's 50 still,
harbor.
and it allows 2 cars, which is awesome.
Right, so that's a concession, could be less, I suppose. There were some suggestions in here on parking, reduced parking permits for residents. So something to consider if we proceed with parking downtown. But I was just hoping to address the paid parking that we already have and how it's still a problem and what solutions there might be to free up some space so employees can have a place to park and residents too. Come on up.
My name is Christiana Smith, and I live outside of city limits. To add to the conversation about the harbor area, yeah, it's been an issue since I moved to Seward about 12 years ago. And when I heard a year or two ago talking about moving the harbor master office up to the uplands, I had made comments about what about the parking, because that's going to take away parking spaces at the uplands, and it's already an issue, especially at the uplands, because there's no designated lines or anything. It's just gravel, and it's paid, but that's typically where trailers are parked because there's space for them, and so I think designating areas like that for trailer use would be helpful to designate for harbor employee use. If you could designate a certain spot, especially since it's still a requirement to pay for a permit for being a harbor area employee. Getting a pass, you're still paying for a pass, you're not being given, so you're paying in order to go to work. But like this year, I noticed every time I've needed to make a run down to the fish house the past several years, it's been, well, I'll stop if I find a spot. And this year, every single time I find a spot in that 2-hour parking, and I really think it's because of enforcement. And maybe, you know, KFT is educating their users about that parking lot is only for 2 hours, and to move to either their lot or to one of the adjoining lots. A couple years ago, the 2-hour parking area, it was suggested that, like, a couple of suggestions about privatizing it or just getting rid of it in general or whatnot, and that really brought about community concerns and comments about, like, we need to go to the hardware store for either our personal business, like personal items, or even businesses. And someone had, I forget who it was, but someone had made mention that there's the north lot that's free, actually free parking, and I think there was going to be a shuttle stop there. And like, where's Z-Dock, or X-Dock, whatever where the Coast Guard is. Z-Flow, yeah, sorry. And so I think, like, educating and signage about using these spaces that may have, like the city shuttle service, but it is amazing how fast that area runs out of spots, even though people are paying $10 a day or $50 for the season or whatnot. It is pretty amazing how fast that it fills up, and I think that designating spots only for with enforcement would be a possible idea, as well as, yeah, the proprietors around that area, like, educating their users on where parking, you know, best parking options are, whether it's their free lot. But I do know there are some outfitters that kind of use that as a central point, so that they're not congesting other areas like Lowell Point, and shuttling from there. So there's different users of that area, and so, yeah, it's a difficult discussion, but I have been concerned for a while, ever since it was announced that the Harbor Master Office was going to be, like, go up into the uplands, just because that would take away parking.
Thank you, Christiana. I'm not aware of the north lot being free. We have the northeastern lot, where the X-Float is, that's paid. We have the north lot, central lot, the free lot, the south lot.
It
and
might
the
not be,
uplands.
this was a couple years
Right.
ago, so I mean, it might have changed.
Right. And we used to have permit-only parking just to the north, just to the south of the visitor center, looking at towards visitor center, and now that's no longer just employees.
Right.
So I guess they have the option of parking anywhere if they can find a place.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Yes, would you like to come up?
Hi, I'm Fred Moroff. I own Beachcombers down at the Harbor District, I guess. The parking lots are big parking lots that are paid. I've heard people love them, and they'd pay a couple dollars more to stay there all day without any hassle. The problem that I see is RVs. They don't have anywhere to park. Perhaps if the breakwater was developed a little bit, that big gravel parking lot, and RVs and boat trailers were all guided down there, they still have access to the same area. I think that would be something to consider. There used to be signs along the road that said 30-minute parking, no RVs. Most of them have been toppled, twisted and anything. So the police really can't enforce a code that there's no signage for. So I don't know if you have any influence, but it'd be nice if the road and bridge, or whatever they are, that does that stuff, would replace the signs and get us straightened out, and then the police could enforce that. And the police don't write tickets every time, which is great, because we don't want to be that, oh, don't go there, you know? They just encourage people to move on. They do a great job. One other issue that I don't know if you have any influence on, people walk back and forth to the KFT parking lot a lot, and there's no crosswalk for them. So they're dodging traffic and traffic's dodging them, and a crosswalk's really cheap compared to a life or something like that. And I think that's probably state maintained. I don't know what it takes to get a crosswalk. But one by the Chevron or even further down, the trail actually takes a veer close to the road, and that's where most people go, and they veer out close to the road, and then, close to the road, and then they dodge across traffic, and a crosswalk would be beneficial for pedestrians. And you're right, KFT parking lot is generally full, as are both big parking lots on each end. I would say you could raise the price on the big parking lots at least a couple of bucks, and develop an RV parking and boat trailer parking, stuff like that for the bigger vehicles on the breakwater. And that's what I would suggest, just thoughts. I haven't been here for any of the other meetings, so I'm just trying to catch up, and thank you.
We appreciate your input. I noticed a lot of RVs are parking on the north side of the north parking lot by just south of Napa.
Yeah.
A lot of them are parking there.
And it takes up 2 or 3 car spaces, which takes away from that.
Right, right. Yes, Rhonda.
Sure, Griswold. I feel like we're getting away from what we're supposed to be doing, in the sense we're supposed to be looking at these options of reducing parking minimums or eliminating them altogether, and we're getting into some parking management issues, which I'm all about trying to just have a discussion about. But who is the enforcer of this? Isn't it Parks and Rec?
Mainly Parks and Rec.
Yeah, so, and I guess I wish that they were here too to give us a presentation, and because we're talking about a lot of choke points that many of you are bringing up, and it is a concern. We have a new hotel going in down there. They are going to have a lot of rooms, and I don't know how they're going to manage their parking if we eliminate any parking minimums. It's going to be more congestion. And there is an underutilized lot there at Z-Float. There's a lot of parking over there that isn't being as utilized as well as it could. And of course, it's out yonder, but those folks that are going out for 2 to 5 day excursions probably should be parking over there rather than taking up space that's closer to the business district, would be my opinion. And like you said, we need RV parking, but I just don't know how effective we could be at this dais could be for managing the parking issues, and how to price it and how to time it. And because I have an opinion about the 2-hour parking. Parts of it should be maybe only 30 minutes, or there should be in and out. And so that's a larger conversation, and we need to, which I guess this is a good start, but I would like to also hear from Parks and Rec, and how well are we enforcing these rules, and because the culture and the businesses has changed down there, that we need to kind of rethink how we're managing the parking that we're offering down there.
I remember you asking about input from Parks and Rec at the last work session. Be nice to know how they like it. Come on up.
I'm Kelly Hatfield from outside city limits. I'm still on the fence of all of this, but from what I understand from what Brennan's saying, trying to eliminate the parking minimums needs to go hand in hand with the paid parking. If you just eliminate the parking minimums, you're creating more of a problem. From a business who is like looking at their people going to paid parking, they're more incentivized to put parking on their own property if their customers are either unable or complaining about the payment of the parking. Right now, our parking downtown in the harbor is, I would say, too cheap, which is why we have a problem. But planning and zoning, unfortunately, isn't in charge of that stuff. So I would just be very cautious about jumping ahead of what the city council is doing if you're lowering minimums or erasing parking minimums altogether without city council already, or Parks and Rec, whoever it is, like managing their side of the parking problem. You're gonna make it worse. So making less parking requirements for hotels, you're gonna get hotels that do not plan to have their parking on site, which then is gonna push all those people into the parking lots. So I would just be very cautious about getting yourself into a situation where you're lowering minimums or erasing them altogether without the support of the other half of this situation that is going to just make it worse. And there is at this point no guarantee that the city is going to raise prices for parking or anything, because at some point the prices for parking are going to be so high that the businesses downtown are going to find shuttles or work together so that they can all use a larger spot outside of town and shuttle their people into the town. But as long as you keep the prices in the downtown area low and you guys choose to raise all the minimums, you're setting the whole the harbor area up for even more congestion. So I'd like to just put that out there right now. Maybe it's more of a get the city doing something first and then you guys responding to it, perhaps.
Good points, thank you so much. We have had a limited amount of feedback from the downtown area saying, no, we don't support paid parking. And I also have concerns if we have paid parking downtown, this town is only 7 blocks wide. It's a very narrow town. And there's zones all mixed up together, very small areas are this and other small areas are that. But I'm concerned that people avoiding, as we do, avoiding paid parking will park in residential areas that are really close. They'll continue to park along 3rd, they'll move over to 4th, they'll move down to 5th and 6th. And those are primarily residential neighborhoods. So we'd just be pushing that parking issue onto people that aren't involved, you know. They don't own a business downtown, they just have a house, have their kids, their dogs, and here's people parking all the time in front of their homes. So I think there's a lot of considerations if we want to move towards paid parking downtown. And we are trying to get input for council because that's Title VIII, that's not us. But there are things that we can do to reduce congestion, and that's why I was suggesting requiring those hotels to not use public parking. So require not use public parking that's free downtown. Use the lot that you've been paying for all these years. Shuttle your people there. Don't let them park on 5th. You know, enforce that. And that might, especially down in the harbor, that might alleviate some of the stress if we move these big users, the tour boat companies and the hotels, move them off-site and require that. Free up parking for those smaller businesses and the employees that need to be there to work. Go ahead, Vanessa.
How do you enforce that? Just no overnight parking? I don't know how we would have enforcement over that.
We'd have to explore that.
That's
Right.
the discussion time.
And we did talk about a code enforcement officer.
Yeah,
so
we don't have, so.
We don't have it now, but there was a lot of support from the commission for that, for just everything code enforcement, and some support already from the council.
I have one more thing to say.
Sure, come on up.
Just a thought that popped up into my head. What about that empty lot that sits right across from all the food trucks?
Are we downtown? Or?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Those are private lots, the ones by Washington, south of the Flamingo.
Yeah.
Those are private lots owned by the Flamingo Lounge.
Okay.
And I guess they can do what they want with them.
Okay. I just...
Food trucks and picnic tables.
I'm not saying where the the food trucks are, but adjacent to that, across the
So,
street, where
South
there's
of the
nothing right
street,
now.
south of there, right?
That's also a private lot.
Yeah,
There's 2 lots owned by the
correct, the
city,
empty one, not the one with all the food trucks in it.
the just picnic tables.
No, next
No,
one.
Across the street
across
from
the
it.
street from
We're
that,
We're
yeah.
talking about, remember our
Next to
Proxman was gonna
Park
put those condos up?
Oh,
There's nothing there,
the anvil shaped one, triangle shaped
I
one?
believe so, yeah.
That's for
That's
sale.
Well, I mean,
I
that's an
believe-
empty lot where employees that work downtown could possibly park for free.
If the private landowner
Yeah.
agrees.
Okay,
Because the
fair
city, the city does not own that lot.
Something to look into though. That's
You should just go try and park there and tell them to kick you off and see what happens. I mean, maybe I'll give it to you. Maybe he'll start renting out, make it a parking lot.
Just a thought.
Yeah, but again,
It is interesting how many vacant lots there are downtown. I did a little survey 2 days ago and just walked up and down. And especially on the east side of the street, there's 2 lots. Well, this lot you're referring to, which I didn't even consider because I was north of Washington. 2 lots, picnic tables, and then food trucks, da-da-da-da, vacant lot that's fenced, da-da-da-da, farmer's market lot, da-da-da, a lot with a fountain. It's very nice. And then you go hop over the other side and no vacant lots on that side. But if you go across Adams Street, the Highliner Restaurant is renting or has a parking agreement or arrangement. They have a sign, Highliner parking only, by the Liberty Theater, north of the Liberty Theater. It's really interesting. Vacant lots, but they're all privately owned. The city doesn't own any vacant lots downtown. Yes?
Just going back to the hotel conversation, because I do think it would be very difficult to regulate a hotel to require their guests to park in certain places. Because at that point, you're not regulating the hotel, you're asking the hotel to regulate their guests. And so you do that by requiring parking minimums, right? And so that's kind of where we're at with like the current paradigm and how they are excessive for our town. There are nuances in the middle if you go the route of eliminating parking minimums, but you're concerned about specific land uses like a hotel. Like there are checks and balances you can use in code, like a conditional use permit, which is currently how that's regulated now in our code, because again, central business, harbor commercial has no parking minimums, but if you want to build a hotel in those zoning districts, you have to get a CUP. And I'm guessing, I wasn't here, but part of the reason was to vet some sort of parking plan for some of those bigger developments. And so that's kind of a middle ground where you can look at specific land uses you're worried about and have a different way to vet parking if you choose to go that direction. So just
So
food
are
for
you
thought.
saying that the hotels that have CUPs CUPs that require off-site parking for their guests, or on-site parking, or a shuttle with off-site parking? It's already required, but then are you saying we can't enforce it? And so we can't tell their guests where to park? What's the point of the CUP?
I'm confused by that
We
question.
we already have
Edgewater's an
CUPs.
example.
Edgewater
is an example.
has a lot, and so does
But they're using
Hotel
city parking.
360. But they both use
Public
city parking.
So the other way to do that, if you don't mind.
Well, but his initial comment was, we can't tell their guests where to park.
And where you could
So what's the
enforce
point?
that is just by charging an exorbitant amount in front of the parking, in front of the hotel, or make it a 30-minute parking zone. And that will eliminate them from parking there all the time. So again, it's parking management that the city has to get on board with. If we're going to be doing this, they have to be prepared that there's going to be some bigger choke points, there's going to be some issues, and they better be prepared to start managing our parking and the land use, and all the land we have around us.
Are you still taking?
Sure.
Oh, sure,
Sorry,
come on
I'm
up.
kind of late to the game here.
Yeah, you're
I
fine.
don't plan on talking, but,
You're just in time.
More the merrier.
so I don't know, my name's Bob Coleman, and I live here in town, but I also drive for Kenai Pure Tourism, so this isn't the reason why I'm here. My wife works at Once in a Blue Moose downtown, But I see issues with parking every day while I'm driving around. We have, as you might be aware, the Kenai Fjord Tours has their own parking lot. You know how many people come in there and, excuse me, are you with Kenai Fjord Tours? Oh, yeah. Well, it's very hard to control that. And it's very difficult for us employees to go up to people and say, you can't park here. But that's just an aside. But on the one issue that I see here, this isn't a 12-month town. It's really most busy 2 months, outlying 4 months where you have a parking issue. The other time it's not. You're not gonna hire, well, I don't think, getting a full-time city traffic enforcer, because you don't need him for 8 months. Maybe you can get him for 4 months, I don't know. But I'd hate to see downtown having paid parking where she comes to work in the wintertime, it's icy, it's snowy, she has a place to park because she works there year-round. Where I don't want her having to walk from some place down to, so again, I think the issue of the 2 months of real heavy traffic, or the 4 months maybe, needs to be considered with what you're gonna expend for this, and I don't know if that...
It's a really valid point. I think we probably just assumed that it was seasonal, because you're such a seasonal town. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're talking about having a city hire somebody, I suppose they could hire somebody, but anyway, I guess it's neither here nor there. So, okay.
And when you were talking about trying to enforce your parking lot, these are just people that aren't guests of Kenai Fjords, they're not taking a tour, but they want to park in your parking lot?
Yeah, they try. And so all we can do is ask, but we can't hire someone to sit in the parking lot 24 hours a day to enforce it. It's the same with enforcing traffic, or parking for other people is going to be difficult.
So they just slide in there and park as much as they want?
Yeah.
Wow.
But, I mean, it's generally major Marines people. Okay, one more thing. So, I go fishing, and I'm a senior citizen. I go fishing, and I like to go over to Spring Creek. All of a sudden, this year, and they weren't giving them before, we get a parking ticket on my car. And I'm just over there fishing. It's not, it's a campground. I'm not there camping, I'm just there fishing. I try to deal with them. You can't get a hold of anyone, you can't discuss it with them. Even the people that patrol the parking lot, like downtown, or not downtown, but down by the KFT office, they didn't know the rules or regulations of the parking. All they do is they go around that one lot and they'll enforce that lot, but that's about it. But they don't even know where we can park. But, so I guess my point is, I'd like to see, if there is paid parking, something for senior citizens, that I don't have to pay an arm and a leg just to go fishing.
Maybe that's where the reduced fee resident pass could come in, which is something the city would have to address, because we don't. But it's no fun to go to your favorite spot and get a ticket. I didn't know they were doing tickets.
All of a sudden this year. So
Yeah.
if the city, if they enforce it, but you're the city council, do they have meetings?
We're planning and zoning. We're an advisory commission, and the council is they are over us mostly.
Oh, okay, I wasn't aware of that.
But we are receiving input.
Okay.
And they are listening. Yeah. I appreciate the valuable insight from someone who drives or Kenai Fjords tours, which is a really important service. Because if you didn't shuttle those people to your parking lot, where would they park? They would be in the center lot. Yeah, thank you. Did you want to speak to the Blue Moose and paid parking?
It's good the way it is right now, because not everybody parks downtown. Most of the people are off the ships and are visiting. So, there's usually a spot to park downtown in front of the stores.
Along 4th, certainly along 4th.
Right. And I noticed behind the buildings, there's often parking spaces in the backs of the buildings. But, you know, for employees or probably residents.
The only thing is the, what is it, the exercise place, they have a parking lot.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about little spots for people parking.
We don't have.
Maybe not the Blue Moose, but other
Yeah,
addresses
Red
there.
Raven, they have they have the lot next to them, and they park there.
Yeah. Susan, would you like to come up?
Hello, I'm Susan Swiderski, and I have a business downtown, Swiderski Fine Art Gallery. I'm just listening to the conversation, and only helpful thought that I was thinking of adding to this discussion is that maybe before paid parking were to, like meters, were to go into effect, you could do signage, just really good signage. I know when I go to Anchorage, the signage is, September to April, no overnight parking between da-da-da-da and da-da-da-da. And, it's just very clear. You know exactly what the rules are. In the KFT parking lot, KFT employees and passengers only, and have a lot of signs. That's the first thing to me. And then right in front of my store, I definitely do see the problem where there's overnight parking of people that are renting rooms in other locations real nearby. And it is a problem. One also I see is the cleaning. The cleaning of the street doesn't get done because there's these overnight cars there. So I would say put up signage every few feet that is saying 2-hour parking, or whatever you decide, and no overnight parking, if that's what you decide. But whatever it is, have it be clear on there, and I would go for the not overnight parking on that street, but, that's my first initial thought, so. That, and then the other thought I had was when you were talking about limiting the lot, the north lot in front of the Harbor 360, that is a very busy parking lot, and I would say get all campers and trailers. They're not supposed to park in there anyway. I think that's, well, I don't think campers are, but they do park there, but that's an employees park there, a lot of small businesses park there. And what I was going to say to that was, I had something, you were talking about larger businesses not using it, so you really have to come up with that. What is that size, that cutoff point for small business versus large business? Because, I know there's these medium-sized businesses and charters and boat companies and fishing charters, so you'd have to know where that is. But those are my comments.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, but can I?
Sure.
Sorry. I probably could go on all night. So I sit in the parking lot there in front of the KFT, waiting for boats to come in, and so I have a lot of time where I'm sitting there watching. Signage, we have signs in our parking lot all over on Phoenix Avenue, no parking except for KFT, customers, blah, blah, blah. So we put up signs. There's signs all along this 4th Avenue there in front of the Breeze Hotel and down that whole street. People ignore it to no end, and I talk to police officers daily, well not daily, quite often, asking them, can you help? They'll park in the yellow zones and make it very difficult for us to get out, and the people know that they're not supposed to park there. They know not to park campers on the street, even on the street, there's signs there. They don't care. The police said they don't give them tickets, they'll warn them, so I'm not a fan of giving tickets, but if warnings don't seem to do anything to control that, there's just a really hard, a lot to control parking on the street or wherever. Even that parking lot in front of the KFT building is, I guess it's city owned, but the police told me they don't have any jurisdiction in there, so they can't go in there and say anything about all the RVs that are parked in there. but most of the time, they just drive up and down the street and do not enforce big RVs parked on the street, sticking out, and so to expect that there's gonna be some enforcement from people, 24-hour enforcement, it's gonna be difficult from the limited amount that I see it now. And I see it daily.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah.
You could write a book.
Wouldn't be very exciting.
You could gather statistics. Yes. Yay! Welcome.
So to bring some comments back to the downtown commercial area, your comments, Chair Griswold, really brought me back to a conversation that I had with my aunts who were visiting this summer for around the 4th of July. And we were working our way back to go back to my house, and they were like, is there no parking enforcement? Because on the few days for the 4th of July, it's kind of a free-for-all. You park where you can. You know, and they explained, you know, it's just a day, or it's just a couple of days, and as long as they're not like directly blocking traffic, it's kind of looked at like, you know, at least they got over as far as they can. I can see your concern about that becoming like an almost everyday thing during the summer season, if people wanted to avoid paid parking directly downtown, and that's where not having sidewalks and curbs in those residential areas, you know, it doesn't help prevent that. And the same to the comments regarding enforcement of the public doing what the public can do. You know, yes, the hotel has been made to provide an off-site parking area. But just because that guest is staying in that hotel doesn't require them to use that spot. And if there's a closer spot that doesn't have any requirements on it, they're gonna park there. And they have every right to, because they're parking within their public purview. And so unless there was requirements in there, like the first few parking spots were, you know, loading and unloading only, you know, 20, 30 minute, you know, time limit. But it is difficult when you do want to go to some of the restaurants or businesses downtown to find. The overnight parking, I'm concerned a little bit, just because there are nightly rentals in the area, and deterring possible public safety if someone has, you know, one too many drinks at a restaurant or a bar, and they want to choose, you know, the right thing and leave their car there and come for in the morning and take a taxi home or get a ride from a friend home. Yes, that parking ticket would still be cheaper than if they you know, drove and were caught. So I don't want to impede that either. And I feel like parking downtown, there could be a non-paid time frame. Most businesses and even the restaurants close 9, 10 p.m. and then they don't open, businesses don't open until 9 or 10 the next morning. So even if you had from like 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., you know, there's not any, like, it's free parking. I don't feel like there's necessarily too terribly, and it might, because there's now a requirement on that parking spot, then people would be apt to like get up and move their vehicle in the morning instead of leaving it there for days. And then I hadn't even thought about 3rd Avenue until reading through the work session packet and seeing an email, a public comment from Kayak Adventures. I find it very interesting that they said their business would be negatively impacted by paid parking, because it would be interesting to talk to the other businesses around Kayak Adventures and see how their van parking pretty much consistently throughout their season, and their guest parking impedes their businesses. As someone who worked and had children that had attended the Boys and Girls Club, Teen Rec Room, whatnot, it was very difficult to find parking there, and it was oftentimes because the kayak adventure vans were parked right there. At this past year, there's been more enforcement in the handicap area, which has been great to see. Those spaces need to be utilized for the proper reasons, but you know, I'm glad to see that area, especially businesses like the senior center, get utilized. That parking on the side of the building is oftentimes full, you know, and the people are utilizing the church gravel parking across the street. And so I just wanted to say, I think it's also, it might be worth a conversation in the 3rd Avenue congested business areas as well, to have a conversation. I hadn't thought about that until I read the public comment. I was like, oh yeah, that's another area. And to read that they didn't see any issue was kind of laughable, because there's usually even public notifications, usually in the winter, about how thin that road can get with people parking, utilizing like Res Art and whatnot, so.
Thank you. Well, we're getting a lot of valuable input from the public. What are the wishes of the commission?
I just have one quick question, just for clarification, because we're talking a little bit about 3rd Avenue. 3rd Avenue is a state road. What can we actually charge for parking on a state road?
I don't know.
Yeah, since we don't own it. So that might be a moot point, we may not even be discussing it if they own it. If the state owns it, because I would know if I was the state and I'm gonna have somebody else charge parking on my road, would I let them do it? I don't know. It might be something to think about, I don't know.
But I wonder if you could put time limit parking.
They would have, the state would have to, the state would have to, it's a state road, it's like the, you know, the comment about the crosswalks and things like this, that, you know, across the board, I can totally concur, you know, from Kenai Fjord's parking area to Napa, or wherever that cross area is, and a couple of the other ones, there'd be a great place to have some of that, but since it's a highway, the state would have to make that determination one way or another.
The city can do safety things like no parking between here and here because we're gonna
clean this up temporarily, yeah. But yeah, that might be.
That's a really good question. I don't know.
I don't either. Just might be something to.
Yes.
We'll look into it.
Yeah, thanks.
I have a question for staff. So the kayak company on 3rd Avenue, what, are they considered an office? What would you, how are they defined?
Oh, for their land use?
Yeah, I mean, they're in central business, and then it'd be a tour guiding business.
And is there a CUP for that, of parking?
Their business is allowed outright in central business.
You know, they said they'd have.
So they have no cup?
They have a CUP for their housing, their bunkhouse that they put in?
Yeah.
Have you ever counted how many vans they have?
Yeah, we know.
So,
They probably have 8 or 10 vans parked on 3rd and 4th.
so they're called a,
Free parking.
But they're on 3rd, and we don't have any.
well, they're actually on 4th too, they're kind of everywhere, but, so, again, they're a tour guide company, is that what we qualify them, in central business, but there's no conditional use on them other than their lodging. They have to have one parking spot then? How many lodging? Do we know how many
They were required to have 6 parking spaces for the lodging, I believe, which is provided in the back.
I don't think that was included in the conditions. There was a lot of talk about it, but it wasn't actually written in the conditions.
So that's actually a multi-use building, technically, given where we went a couple work sessions ago. Would that qualify as a multi-use building, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much, right?
Yeah, multi-use development.
Okay. And it has 6 dwelling units in that, between the front and the back and up? And
Yeah, I don't know the exact number. I'd have to look
Okay,
back at those.
so they need 6 spaces, technically.
But they're not required by the CUP, because I did look that up, and they don't use it for parking, they use it for driving through their trailers full of kayaks and kayak storage. So all their parking is on public right-of-ways, and on Jefferson, too.
So it's a choke point.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Very much.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we are identifying many choke points and issues.
Well, it's also in keeping with what we've been working on as far as identifying and coming up with these new definitions of land use. And so, if you don't mind me reflecting a little bit on the multi-use building, I talked to Courtney about this, about the amount of parking spaces that are needed. And did we decide on 1 space per unit? Is that where we ended up with that when we were discussing that new land use, or that new definition?
For the
Multi-use buildings, yeah, where you have a storefront and then some buildings or some dwellings on top, or...
that is a number that I believe was discussed. I don't know if the commission ever came to a consensus, but
Okay.
I was looking through some of those original documents the staff shared with us when they made the code and gave us a code. And I believe that's where I saw that the central business district was not intended for residential use. It was businesses. And I don't think they foresaw that there would be so many people living there and needing parking. And so it has become a problem. Yes, you've been very patient. Thank you.
I think looking at since we've been talking about the kayak adventures, is a really good example of a lot of, what's going on. In a nutshell, right, they are in the central business and did not need to be required to have parking minimums to build. They would not have built if there were parking minimums. And because we are not charging for parking, they're now outsourcing their parking onto the public right-of-way. So it's really the perfect example of how parking minimums, or how getting rid of parking minimums can promote infill, how doing that can cause a parking problem without parking enforcement and charging for parking. And so I think, like, right there is, like, we do want to promote infill. I think we don't want to see empty lots. We want to see things happen in our city. We want to solve the housing crisis, right? We want to make it cheaper to build. At the same time, we need to manage the parking issues that crop up with that. And so like cities that have successfully gotten rid of parking minimums have followed it up with, every time, charging for parking, but in a careful way. You don't just charge willy-nilly. You don't charge year-round in Seward. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. You don't charge overnight for lots of places. That also doesn't make sense. What you do is you look to see, you do a parking study. Are cars circling the block to look for a spot? If you see that, you're not charging enough for parking. There should be around 85% utilization of the parking spots. And if you don't have that, you're charging the wrong price. So there are ways to account for this. And then the final piece of the puzzle is to take that money for, again, cities that have done this successfully, take that money you get from the revenue of charging for parking, and you do improvements of that neighborhood or area. You put in the sidewalks that we're missing. We don't have sidewalks in a lot of places. You do road improvements, you put in lighting, you put in whatever the community wants at that point. It's money that goes right back into the community. So it's taking a hidden cost and putting it up front and letting the community do something with it. And it's a win-win because we get more development and we get improvements to our infrastructure. So.
How would you address the fact that Third Avenue is probably not a place where we could charge for parking?
Third Avenue is a sticking point, and that's why having state entities inside of your city is
Can't do much about it right now.
Yeah, that's kind of,
Right.
we're kind of stuck with that.
So the kayak company is in an optimum place where they will always have free parking. Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, there's lots of issues, no doubt about that.
And
When you said 85% utilization of the parking lots, or you're not successful, what if it's 100% utilization? Does that mean
Charge more.
unsuccessful?
Charge
Means
more.
charge more?
Yeah.
I see, okay.
there should be enough, there should be the right amount of spaces, so they're basically mostly used, but if somebody comes in and wants to pay the price, they know where they're going, they will pay that price. If somebody comes in and doesn't want to pay that price, they'll go to the free spot, they'll walk the extra blocks, they'll do that. But you're charging the price that the market figures out the price, and that way you have less congestion, people are able to park quickly, you have higher turnover of spaces.
Just wonder where they would go. If they think it's too expensive, where
Well,
would they park?
demand follows what like the market, like, supplies, right? So, they might take it on their way in, they might walk in, they might take the bus in, they will do other things, they might actually go to another place, they might decide it's too expensive, yes, that's another thing that might happen, If somebody's going out, to a restaurant and they think it's too expensive to pay for that restaurant meal, then yes, they might stay home and do the cheaper alternative. There's all kinds of things that are gonna happen. It's gonna be what the market decides.
Yeah, and I can
add one more too.
I was gonna say, I worked for a kayaking company, different one, and, I'd lead the week-long expeditions out in the national park, and people, $10 a day, like, oh, I'll pay $60 to park there for the week, but let's say it was $20, and you don't wanna pay that extra money, then you find a different way to get there, whether that's taxi, the shuttle, that's the market in work, and so I get that side of it. And that would free up spots, and if you're not increasing, the permit for the employees, then that provides more access to employees and locals to be able to park in a close proximity to their place of employment.
It's a delicate balance between Seward getting a reputation for being a ripoff, that we're being unwelcoming because we're charging so much for everything, and let's just go to Homer instead, We're not a given destination that people are going to come here no matter what. So it's a really delicate balance between what's a fair price and what's going to just make people not want to come here.
I don't know, I disagree. I've heard they're going to come anyway.
They're going to come anyway?
Yeah. I don't think you're going to price them out. There's always going to be someone coming. And I do, we have gone through this thought, your comment about going into other private land spaces, so people will park and impede on private owned land or people's driveways or whatever, and that was a concern when it came up with harbor charging for parking in the harbor, and that really didn't happen.
There's no residential neighborhoods near the harbor.
There's some across the street, and they're in other people's businesses, but, and the reason was talking about that too, they get people coming in, and it is up to those businesses to enforce that, so.
Right.
So I think it can be done.
I don't know what the protocol is, so I don't want to be a host.
Raise your hand. Come on up.
So, again, we came up from Las Vegas. Now, we're not Las Vegas, but we are both tourist destinations. If you do some research on Las Vegas, they have priced themselves out to where they're hurting right now. Their parking, all the resort fees, but they charge $40. Yeah, people pay it, but now do some research on it, see if people will go back again because they're so unhappy with paying high prices. So they may pay it once, but they won't always come back a second time, and it does hurt their tourism. So I'd hate to see, pricing people, so they pay it first time. One more thing, it's like fish house. Okay, we have the 2-hour minimum parking. I'd hate to see $20 an hour to park in there if I wanna run down to buy something for my house and I gotta pay $20 to go in the park because there's no other parking. So I hope we don't price the residents out of, so make it so expensive that they don't wanna go down, can't go down and buy stuff from the stores.
Our one remaining store. Right, the center parking lot where it's free parking for 2 hours with enforcement seems to be a really good option for locals.
Yeah.
Who want to shop there.
It is.
There's turnover, we don't pay anything, it's turnover, and we go in, do our shopping and get out. Yeah, well, I am worried about pricing them out, we don't want to just get one-time visitors. June?
But I know, to add to what he just said, I can see if, like he said, somebody local has to go pay $20 to run in and get things from the hardware store, the only hardware store left in town. It would just go on in Anchorage and just on a fridge. I wouldn't go pay $20 to go buy a few things here and there that I need to fix something, no. Just saying.
Yes, Brennan.
I don't think charging for parking is gonna price us out of people visiting here. All it is charging an honest price. I don't know what's going on in Vegas. Vegas is known for getting every buck they can out of you. That's not what Seward's doing. All we're doing is taking the price that every resident is paying through taxes right now. It's a hidden cost, but we're all paying for these parking spaces that are free, allegedly, but we're all paying for them through our taxes. And exposing it, and it's getting the visitors to pay their fair share. We can have resident parking passes to get us to important business areas. There are solutions to this problem to keep residents from being priced out. But all I'm asking for is to let's just charge what things are worth. Let's be honest about the pricing. Let's not hide free parking and expose it for what it is.
Just to add to it, again, utilizing the time right too. I have noticed there's an entity downtown that has inadvertently put 30-minute time limit parking on their building. And believe it or not, there's always a spot. And it's not crowded. Whereas you go in front of Sweet Darlings where there's nothing like that, there's never a parking spot there during the busy season. So I thought it was pretty clever. It works, you just have to manage it right. And charge the right price and a fair price. There also may be some properties that people aren't utilizing, and if they can utilize it for parking, as well as the city, we have an empty lot north of the fire station. It's just sitting there empty. Why not use it for parking?
Because it belongs to the volunteers. And it does get used all the time.
All the time?
Yep.
Okay.
It's used for training, it's used for the fire trucks to be parked during busy 4th of July seasons. When we can't get our trucks out of the building, we use that back lot to get them so we can utilize them if necessary. And it's used for training every Wednesday when we can be outside to do things. So it is used a lot.
Are there, I like the using vacant spots for parking. Is there any zoning on turning like an undeveloped land into like paid parking? Because I just wonder if paid parking did pop up downtown and somebody who has an undeveloped piece of land could be like, hey, can I be zoned for this? Because like downtown Anchorage, you know, they have the street paid parking and then there's the parking garages, but then there's like these random little lots that have the, you know, scan QR code and pay. And so that's, I'm just wondering now, my brain's working.
If we had paid parking downtown and somebody had a vacant lot and they charge slightly less, it might be worth their while
Right.
to start
If
it.
they're, I mean, because they're not utilizing that land for anything
Right.
anyways, so if they could put in for a business license or for, land use or whatnot, for just a parking lot, like, is that an option for these undeveloped landowners?
Is a parking lot allowed outright in CD?
In
So
all-
it's our,
In all commercial zoning districts. And then,
so apparently it's not worth their time to do it. But if we
Right,
had.
but there's free parking all
Exactly.
around their spaces, but
Can't
if,
compete with that. But if there was paid parking, then that might become a business opportunity for a vacant lot owner. But right now, probably not.
right.
Yes.
And if we did have metered parking in downtown, some of those funds could go to off-site parking lot, like over by the railroad land that's for lease, and just have some parking stripes out and at a bus stop. And that can also help pay for the bus that, we already utilize, and potentially become even maybe year-round if we, really pumped it up. So, I think it's,
Look
good
for
way to go.
opportunities.
Yeah.
Do you want to tackle these draft ordinances? See if we get anywhere?
Can agree to any of them?
They're beginning to look really familiar, aren't they? I did provide a laydown. If we look at the second draft ordinance, what I wanted to do with this laydown was summarize what we kind of worked over the first time. And that was some editing, and we also eliminated some things we didn't think needed to be on there. So instead of going through that all over again.
So should we use this one in lieu of the packet instead of the
Well,
packet?
if you could do them side by side, because I didn't change anything from our work session. That was back in June when we looked at that. And I didn't want to, it's not my job to change anything that the staff presented. But we did, for example, eliminate harbor or marina, one parking space for every 2 established boat stalls. Because this is the city. And it's like, okay, we're already kind of doing that with the city. So there's nobody else that would need to do that, it's the city. And we also deleted charter boat operations licensed for 20 or more people. And we just left it at day cruise, 1 parking space for 4 people. But we're not talking about that right now. I just wanted to point out, these were changes that we discussed in June.
and I think these actually can be left because they're uses that are allowed in the industrial zoning district, so although unlikely to happen, a harbor marina could be developed and charter boats could operate over there, so that's, the initial thought was, why are these parking requirements in here? Because the harbor commercial district doesn't have parking requirements, but further investigation shows that other zoning districts allow these uses, so.
Lots to think about. But at any rate, this is what we ended up with at our June work session. Cool. Okay. So would you like to look at the second one or the first one? First. The first one is to eliminate parking minimums in all commercial zoning districts. And that's office residential, auto commercial, harbor commercial, central business, and industrial.
And where are we on that page?
That's on page 21.
All right.
If you want to start there. And as I mentioned, there have been no problems, concerns about office residential, where it's residential, there's a lot of people living there, and I believe we should leave that alone. Auto commercial, same thing. If you look at these zoning maps, I hope everyone has at the ready their zoning map, especially for downtown. Auto commercial is occupied by residential uses. Consider that. And then there's our good old harbor commercial and central business and industrial. So this is a very broad and extreme change to eliminate parking minimums in all the commercial zoning districts, and I strongly oppose it. But I'm listening to the commission.
So can we use the pie chart on page 12 to interface with this to give us an appropriate idea?
Let's take a look.
Of how many residential units there are per land use area?
Well, it's a pie chart for short-term rentals, which has nothing to do with it.
Okay, well, there's long-term rentals too.
And
So in the next
they don't
one,
have data for that. They have no idea how many long-term rentals there are. But
I guess-
these are just rentals, they're not residences. We don't have that data.
So this is just this is more than just central business, then this is.
It's every
everything.
commercial zone.
Yeah, so again, central business and harbor commercial already do not have parking minimums. So the first draft ordinance would just align the other three principally commercial zoning districts with those two.
With the two zones that have the most problems.
But they do, because you have these conditional use areas in harbor and in central business, right? Where you're required to have so many parking spots for the hotels and, so that's where I'm confused.
If the business chooses to operate in a central business district or the harbor commercial,
Yeah,
where they're not allowed outright, like a
Right.
hotel, but they're not allowed outright in either zone. So then we say, well, how can we add conditions to make it so that they're not having such a negative impact?
right, but with this, what we're talking about today is just eliminate that, so it's all outright.
Well, that's a good question. Would that eliminate conditional use permits in these zones?
No.
Okay. So uses
No, the
that
land use table
aren't
would
allowed
not
outright.
change, yeah.
Okay.
So for example, I mean, the conditional use permit that you all had with the hotel at the Oriental Garden at Central Business District does not need parking requirements, but you voted down that CUP because you felt that in that area, in that congested area, that the developer should provide at least some on-site parking for that hotel development. And so that's, if you eliminate parking minimums, again, that's like what I was trying to get at earlier, like that's one of your checks, is you can have land uses you're concerned about, still have a vetted parking requirement if you require a conditional use permit.
Well, when you said some, it wasn't just some, we went back to this, this land use, or this code, and it said he had to have 76 spaces.
No, he did not need any spaces. The commission and when it came to CUPs, from my understanding, Courtney can fill in, the commission also often defaulted to the parking minimum requirements in other zoning districts, but he was not required to have
So he
any
wasn't
parking
required to
spaces.
have one parking space per unit?
No.
He was gonna have 42 units?
Not by code, that was what the commission was
Yeah.
wanting to require.
Yeah, by code, he did not meet any parking requirements.
And not for his restaurant and convention center and bar?
Well, why did we go through all of that then? I don't know, it just seemed like, so now we're coming to this, and if he was to come back today and we were, say, eliminate parking minimums, or even reduce parking minimums, then he would go, wow, yay, I'm gonna start tomorrow.
No. No.
No?
Because you still need a conditional use permit. So
And where does
this,
that
if
conditional-
you
Yeah.
eliminate, let me just try one more time. If you eliminate parking minimums, you, as a developer, would not need to install off-street parking for a development that is allowed outright in the land use table in city code. If a development requires a conditional use permit, that is an opportunity for the commission to put on conditions that are more restrictive than current code, and oftentimes in the harbor commercial and central business zoning districts, the commission has put on parking requirements for developments that require a CUP. So the developer is not required by code, they're required by you. And that is why you turned down that CUP, is because you all wanted parking and he did not provide it.
Well, it was in the code. Do we just say, oh, let's defy the code, we're gonna go?
You're not, the whole point of a CUP is to put on restrictions beyond code, and that's what you all decided to do in that scenario.
So can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Which of the commercial zones, if any, are allowed to build hotels outright? Do they all require CUPs for hotels?
Only auto commercial is allowed outright.
Okay, so in auto commercial zoned lots, the developer can technically build a hotel with zero parking.
No, then the parking requirements come into play, because auto commercial, you have to have parking on site. So central business doesn't require
But if
parking.
we change this, I mean,
Yes.
Right.
so if you eliminated, like if you changed it to this draft, then auto commercial, they would not have to have any parking on site to build a hotel. That's the only zone that really would be affected, essentially.
Correct.
For hotels.
For hotels.
And do we, I hear somebody. Do we have in our code the multi-use development? Is that in our land use planning here? Yeah.
The commission did a work session on that, and so it will be coming to the next meeting, September 2nd, for your
Okay.
approval of
So that
the
would be another one
recommended
that might be
changes.
affected, that will be affected, she said.
It wouldn't for hotels.
Right.
Yeah.
But for a multi-use development. Okay. So we don't have that definition yet, and it's not in our land use plan. Do you want to talk about this one some more, or do you want to talk about the second draft some more?
I mean, I think we could tweak the land use allowed table if there's concerns about certain types of uses being allowed outright all of a sudden. But I still think all the research I've looked into says parking minimums are a big issue. We have heard from public that it has prevented development. And I guess I've done some research too into cities. We have some in the packet, but similar sized cities. Not to derail, I guess, the conversation. I don't know. It's in the packet, so I just want to talk about it too. But other cities that have gotten rid of parking minimums, there's a number mentioned in the packet. You can find a really good website called parkingreform.org and download their data set if you want, like I did. And I found that 2,327 U.S. cities have implemented parking reforms to remove minimums at some level. Of those, 92 had all parking minimums removed. Of those 92, 11 are with a population size of less than 5,000. And of those 11, none of them have rescinded their change. Actually, of the 2,327 U.S. cities that have decided to remove parking, have parking reforms and get rid of the parking minimums, only 4 cities have actually reversed that change. So it seems like it's pretty successful.
I'd like to point out that Seward is a pretty unique community. And just looking at the communities, the 4 communities in our packet that were small communities, 10,000 to 20,000 people. We, as I mentioned, are 7 blocks wide from Van Buren south. We have multiple mixed zoning districts in small areas. We have no access to a larger landmass We are geographically isolated. We don't have access to off-site parking lots or overflow lots and shuttle services. And we have a very seasonal tourism economy. And I just don't see that their solutions fit Seward. I really don't think so. And that statement on page 3, while intended to ensure adequate parking supply, practice has shown that such requirements often lead to inefficient land use, higher development costs, and reduced opportunities for infill or redevelopment. I find that parking requirements have helped reduce supersizing of lots. They have reduced the permanent use of public right-of-way for parking, and they've reduced the use of residential neighborhoods for displaced commercial parking, among other reasons. So we have a fundamental disagreement with how they do it outside and how we should do it here. I don't think we have problems with many of our commercial districts. Office residential is doing great, no problems. Where's the other list? Go through them. And the places we do have problems is where we have paid parking or, downtown. Anyway, I really disagree with much of what your research has shown. I think we're really special, and those solutions are not going to work for Seward. Go.
Thank you. Sure, I mean, I agree, we are a special town in many ways, but our speciality seems to disappear when it comes to the housing crisis, which we are sharing with the rest of the nation for the same reasons, actually. These are reasons commonalities that we do share with the rest of the U.S. We are car-centric. We are not pricing the cost of cars correctly, and it is leading to a housing crisis here, along with a lot of regulations, but this is just one of the pieces of the puzzle. Getting rid of parking minimums in itself will not solve the issue. It has to come with other reforms as well, and we've been working on those. But it's a multifaceted problem, and we are unique in many ways, but we are not unique in avoiding this problem.
Well, driving or biking around Seward, I'm amazed how many houses are going up. It's amazing. There's people are building all over the place, and I think we just have to be patient. I gave you that extensive list of what the city of Seward and planning and zoning has done to enable housing to happen. We've bent over backwards, and now we're seeing some of those results. It's really something we just have to wait, and when the public works facility moves, boom, that opens up a whole bunch more lots. I think we're on our way. We're doing really well. And the borough, of course, has opened up how many acres? 2,000 acres for residential development. So I don't think we have to throw away parking that's working for the city of Seward in these residential areas and most of the commercial zones. I don't think we have to just throw those all away. They're working, we need them.
Can I make a suggestion? Since this does seem kind of a radical change, can we go back to what we talked about earlier, in the earlier meeting, and what we agreed on?
We didn't get very far, but we did say half a parking space for hotels.
Yeah.
That's about all we got.
Can I say something?
Sure.
About that, I think we agreed on that, but I see it's back over here again, one space, because a lot of people come in and they don't have a vehicle.
This is eliminate parking minimums altogether. So that's, so if
a
you
lot
go
of people, I think if we go on this one, we stay with a half a.
So if you go to the reduced parking this way.
I mean, I was just looking at this.
Great. That's as far as we got, actually. That's the only thing we could figure out. And that was, and see, it also was based on very little data. We just thought, it would be nice to have a consistent number instead of .65 here and, one there.
0.3 here and 1.2.
There's quite a few options, so that wasn't really fair to be so inconsistent.
Well, on the piece that he gave us on reduced parking minimums, there's also an addition in there of office and medical and dental. That one got reduced. And eating and drinking establishments, which we did not talk about.
We didn't talk about them.
But it's, so can we talk about them as well as include the multi-use buildings definition as well? And just include the, have those uses also be under the same minimums?
So we're looking at page 24?
Yeah.
This one is titled Reduced Parking Minimums for Uses in Commercial Zoning Districts. So that does not include dwellings and lodges. It doesn't include institutions and public uses, because those are not commercial. Deletes motor vehicle sales and service establishments. I'm not sure why that was crossed off. I don't know. It's not a whole lot of changes. Anyone else?
I would also
wanna
like
check
to
that out?
consider, we can, on the lodging, rooming, and boarding house, if that could be reduced to a 0.5 space per rental unit.
In the commercial zones?
Yes.
One space per rental unit, or what?
Reduce it to 0.5.
And why?
I think it's just in keeping with hotels and motels. It seems very similar, I don't know.
Could I say something on that? Some of these are in the residential areas where people live instead of in the main areas where the hotels and stuff are. So they would need, so if you're gonna get a B&B or something like that, you're usually gonna be driving a vehicle to go and stay there.
True, and that's where that's where I'm a little confused. We're just talking about central business, where these land uses exist in central business district under a cup. Is that right?
This, it says except in the
The reduced parking minimums for uses in commercial zoning, this one is not, it's just referring to all commercial zoning districts, so.
It said except in the central business.
So when, and it doesn't, central business district and harbor commercial would remain as they are now without the any minimum requirements.
Okay. I'm crossing up with the condition, the cups that are required in central business.
Yeah.
So this is for all the land used areas, I guess, correct?
So you are talking, if we look at the top, where it says, reduced parking minimums for uses in commercial zoning districts. We're talking, there already are no parking requirements for CB and HC. So we'd be adding for office residential, auto commercial, and industrial, there would be
I wouldn't read that like that, sorry. It's just, this would still pertain to all uses within, like for example, some of these aren't uses that are just in commercial zoning districts, but we marked uses that are in commercial zoning districts. So for example, the multifamily dwellings and other places containing multiple dwelling units would include our mixed-use apartments in commercial buildings, and multifamily dwellings are in auto commercial, office residential, which are commercial zoning districts. So we're addressing uses that are in commercial zoning districts, but it doesn't, we aren't changing the codes, that it just pertains to those uses in the zoning districts. Does that make sense? if there's multifamily and residential districts, this new proposed parking requirement of one parking space would still apply to that in the residential zoning district. But it's included in this draft because multifamily dwellings are in commercial zoning districts as well.
That's pretty confusing, actually.
It is even for me. And it is in that,
Because we can't, the parking requirements aren't based on zoning districts like the land uses allowed table. So when we're looking at the parking requirements, you're looking at uses, not zoning districts. And so that's why we're
okay.
looking at uses that are in commercial zoning districts, but we're not regulating it by zoning district. It's different than the land uses allowed table.
So eliminating parking requirements as we have in Central Business District and the Harbor Commercial, if any of these uses are in those zones, they still have to provide this amount of parking? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I hear.
So, yeah, I mean, except in central business and HC districts, all zoning districts have to abide by these parking requirements. But you don't nitpick within these parking requirements for all the other zoning districts, like the land uses allowed table.
So how did you come about that? Just ask.
Come about which part?
That's for Courtney, the question. How did you come about for the way this is worded?
Which
It's already in
part?
code. It's already written in code.
That's in code right now.
It's already in code.
And you want to change it to?
That's what's,
The
that's what's in
changes
the
would be
packet.
in the table?
So any changes would be bolded, italics, and underlined.
So just a quick cross-reference to the June worksheet handout. So that first land use would be dwellings, housing, and lodging. And that's why I just kind of wanted to have this handout here. So under that, under multiple family dwellings and other places containing multiple dwelling units, and Courtney suggested that would be where we'd also include mixed-use developments, correct?
Yeah, I mean, code already says other places containing multiple dwelling units, which
Okay.
would be the mixed use, yeah.
Okay. In our final, I'd like to use that word because it's something that's been real important lately.
Yeah, mixed use.
So mixed-use development.
Okay.
Okay, so then the change would be, instead of 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit, plus a half a space for every unit larger than 2 bedrooms or greater than 1,000 square feet in size, it would be 1 parking space per dwelling unit. For multiple family dwellings, mixed-use developments, and other places containing multiple dwelling units. And I would like to retain the 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit because that's what single-family and 2-family dwellings and parish houses require, but delete the plus a half a space for every unit larger than 2 bedrooms or greater than 1,000 square feet in size, because we don't look at how big a house is to see if they need another half a space. We don't look, it's not a problem. But I think 2 spaces per dwelling unit is very realistic, and I'd like to retain that. But delete that half a space, etc.
So with this, you're then assuming that each dwelling unit, well, it's multiple family dwelling units, so each unit is going to require 2? But none of them are single family then, or single, like a 1-bedroom apartment or something like that in a multiple family? Because then you're requiring 2 parking spaces for a 1-bedroom?
1-bedroom houses required to have 2.
I think if we want to incentivize actual multifamily dwellings, then one parking space is a much better number, even though that's completely made up and arbitrary.
I know.
Everything else has been.
And it's not gonna work, I mean,
Well,
I don't
that's-
think that would work because
Well,
most,
Let
most.
Brennan
okay.
finish, please.
That's, again, the thesis of Donald Shoup, minimum parking requirements are outdated practice, onboard from theory. Parking requirements are basically all made up, and planners should not waste our time trying to update them. We should be repealing them. But if we are going to insist on going down this path, then we should be encouraging multifamily development, because that's what we are missing. We are not doing good on that. We are really missing that in this town, despite all the new development. And we should be encouraging that by slashing this to one, half, quarter. You know, there are people who don't have vehicles. We should not be requiring people to have vehicles to live in a house. That is an expense that causes everything to go up. Their rent, if they're renters, causes the building price to go up. It causes these places to not even get developed because there's not enough available land, because all of your land, once you go up a couple stories, is all parking. It just locks you into no development taking place. So, again, half, quarter, that's where I'd start.
We do have multiple family dwellings on the Phoenix subdivision. There's quite a few there. There's many more planned for the Hilltop subdivision with these requirements in place. So I don't think that's an impediment. It's happening. They're in the works.
Chair Griswold? I think we also need to give some room to the developers themselves and the market and let them determine that too. It's part of their marketability. If they want to provide 2 for 1, and if they think that's where the market's at, then they should do that. They have the freedom to do that. They could be building more.
We have somebody out in the audience that would like to speak.
Yes.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Brennan said, like, if you guys, we've been talking a lot about the missing middle housing, right? Like, we don't have those tall structures with 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom condos or townhouses in them, in large part because the parking stops that from happening, because those multifamily dwelling units up on Phoenix, they're all, I believe, 1 level, if I remember correctly. You can't add any more density because they run out of parking on the ground level. So the more parking you require, the less you are allowing people to add that density in stories.
I'm not sure which one level multi-units you're talking about.
Zimmerman has some like 4plexes up there, that's what I thought you were talking about. They're all 1 level, I believe.
Oh, those.
Which ones, I don't know which
Right.
you're talking about.
On the other side, on Dunham Drive, they're all 2-story.
You're talking about the Zimmerman ones, which are on Dunham Drive, that area there. Yeah, I know what you're talking about those.
Those 1-stories are on Phoenix.
Like
Yes.
townhouse style then?
But they're not on top of each other. They're
I'm
townhouses.
talking about like
They're
structures
side by
that
side.
have like
They're
10,
two
15, 20
Oh.
condos, like 2-bedroom, we need like 2 3-bedroom condos, 2 3-bedroom townhouses. Adding this many parking space requirements for that, you're not gonna have enough space in town to build those missing middle housing you guys have been talking about for so long. Like, you need to kind of make it so that those are possible to be developed. But making like that much requirement for parking is going to keep people from developing things like that, which is what you want to incentivize for.
So Hilltop does have zoning for townhouses and condos, but right now they're building single-family dwellings because that's what goes up fast. So it's happening, we just have to be patient.
It's also affordable because there's not the parking requirements.
They're required to have 2 spaces. Yes?
Yeah, I haven't lived in any multiple family dwellings in Seward, but I have elsewhere. And anywhere that I've lived in a multifamily dwelling, you get 1 dedicated spot, and then you're told there may be additional guest spots, and they're first come, first serve. And so I feel like requiring 2 is kind of above and beyond what the norm is. I feel like the norm is typically 1 per dwelling unit. yeah.
So we're talking, in Seward, a multifamily dwelling is a triplex, a fourplex, fiveplex, up to an apartment. So it's kind of a pretty big range.
Right. Yeah, and I've lived in different types of multi-family dwelling, and typically the duplex, because there's a garage, usually, you know, there would be a considered, you know, two parking, but like for apartments or multiple dwelling units without a garage, typically there's one dedicated space per unit. Sometimes, usually the developers will put in a handful of like guest parking spots that are first come, first serve. But I mean, it's, and that's kind of, they're building for who's gonna use their space. Kind of like, you know, if 85% of the parking is being used, you're probably at about the right price point. It's same thing with the hotels. I know if I wanna stay downtown Acreage, I'm looking at hotels that offer on-site parking. Because I don't want to deal with off-site parking, but that's personal preference. And so yeah.
In the places where you live, multifamily dwellings, did you find parking was adequate?
Yeah.
And guests could find a place?
Yeah, either an open guest spot or street parking.
Thank you. Is there someone else in the audience?
Well, I'm in the hotel, but we're not in hotels yet, so.
Okay.
When we get to hotels, then I got something.
Okay, thank you. Brennan?
I would just like to say, if we are a unique community, we should not be basing our parking minimums off of other communities either. We do have a very large share, probably top 1%, I'd have to check this, for people who actually walk or bike to work here, commute that way. It is around, last time I checked, 8%, which is off the charts for the USA. So again, requiring parking minimums that 8 to 10% of our population, not including kids or elderly who can no longer drive, seems kind of ridiculous.
Do they have a car parked at home?
Not everybody.
These bikers?
No. One of my neighbors didn't have a car for a whole year. I was without a car for a whole year. There are plenty of people who are car-free, especially seasonal workers too. And we should not be requiring them to have spaces where they're going to live in.
Seasonal housing is a whole nother can of worms. Right. So, one parking spot? Okay, one parking spot. Next one, hotels and motels, a half a space per guest unit. Would you like to address that?
I would. I had a lot of money and I own a hotel and I had 100 rooms. I need 100 parking spaces now. But we're going to reduce that to 50. So I got a lot of money. I'm going to reduce it by 25 and build 50 more rooms, so I've got 75 parking spaces. And now, all of a sudden, I got 150 cars or 100 cars coming to town for 75 spots, and it doesn't work. You can drive through the Harbor District hotels, and those parking lots are full every day, every night. And even the big lots on each end have cars in them. And the subway parking lot has cars in it. They're everywhere. So I guess I'm thinking that that's a bad way to go. It feels like you're going to kick the ball down the road, and pretty soon we're going to have a parking garage, and that's going to be a lot more money for somebody, somewhere, or it just doesn't sound right. 50 parking spots for 100 rooms. Go ahead.
I have a question for him.
Sure.
So do you think as a business owner, and you see that, and the statistics are telling you that when people come and occupy a hotel, that every one of them are bringing a car? And in Seward, that really hasn't, that statistic isn't there. But even if it was, would you really want to do that to your customers? Wouldn't you want to, if you really are confident that it's one car per room, would you really want to have 75 or 100 rooms with only 75 parking spots?
I would not.
Okay, so then that's up to you,
I
right?
believe that
We don't require it, but it'd be up to you to
Right.
decide how you want to accommodate your customers, right?
So this, when one.
We're not telling you can't build more parking spots. We're just giving you a minimum. So it's your choice.
So I got 100 rooms, how many parking spots do I need today?
Well, if we do this, then you only need 50.
If you do that, then you only.
But you may not deny this and say, no, I think I'm gonna need 75 or 100, and you could do that.
Right. But if
So
this-
do that.
I think,
Just a minimum.
the minimum, right?
Yeah, it's just a minimum.
Saying you have
A
to have
parking
at least
spot
50.
per room, one parking spot per room. Right? If it's reduced to a half a parking spot.
That's just a recommendation. It's a minimum.
Right.
You only have to
But-
do half of it. You don't have to.
People
Rhonda,
develop
let him finish.
Always see dollars, right? They add 75 more rooms,
Mm-hmm.
and there's more dollars, but there's less parking. And that parking's gonna overflow, so it's already overflowing. So,
I'll
and
just-
don't tell the hotel owners I said that.
I'll just add, because I think for context on why that number was, there might be some places where 100% of the guests bring a car. I think just because of the traffic that hotels see from cruise ships or people via the train, like, we've been getting feedback that not nearly every single guest brings a vehicle, and that's just unutilized land.
I agree that not everyone does. And maybe the people are telling you this own the hotels, I don't know. But when you drive through the parking lots this evening or in the morning, they are full. And that's been that way for 3 months. Mid-May through the end of August, pretty much. Some of those parking lots get used by the vans, the tour vans that have a trailer, so they're taking two. When are they gonna, just some, don't tell.
It is refreshing to hear from someone besides a hotelier, because that's the main input that we've gotten, that they feel, as Danny said, that many of their customers are from the cruise ships, the tour buses, and the train, so they don't need to provide that much. But
Nice try, I'd say.
They are full at night, though.
They are.
I have seen that.
Yeah.
Every lot.
Reality check. Brennan?
Those lots might be full, but there are other lots that they are required to have to meet their parking minimums that are not utilized at all. There are empty lots in the downtown here that are being held for hotels to use, which they pretty much never do. And that is because of our code. So, if this were to go through, it would free up those lots to be used for something more useful. A hotel would require a CUP in the central business if it was in there, or if it was in the auto commercial, yes, they could build it outright. They could do that. But those lots are being held empty right now. The city is not getting any real revenue from them, from the tax base, and they're actually not all that fun to walk by or look at. So, right now, even our minimums are too high for hotels.
Are there any available down in the Harbor District?
Depending on who you talk to, yes and no.
Well, that's the only end of town that comes through the morning. So I can only speak to that end.
And I would say if there is a parking problem down there, then we're not charging the right price.
Well, I agree. If you make it half of the lot for each room, we're not charging them. It's just, I don't. I'm not a parking attendant. I thank you for your time, and I gotta leave.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
And your son being so
Yeah.
patient.
Sorry?
Your son is being so patient and appreciative.
He's a good guy.
My grandson.
Grandson.
My son, I don't want to know what I said.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a-
Well, we really don't have much data, and that's just the way it is. So what are the wishes of the commission for a half space per guest unit versus one space?
I'm for keeping that,
Keeping which, half space or one?
the one space. for the multiple family dwellings, which is
Well,
also included.
no, we're moving on to the
Hotels.
hotels.
Yeah, the half space, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Okay, have space?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, yes, okay.
We can work on it.
Lodging, rooming, and boarding house. 1 space per rental unit, plus spaces for the principal dwelling unit. So how does that work? What is the difference between a guest room and a rental unit? When a B&B rents out a room, is that called a rental unit now?
So, yeah, rental unit is the term that's used in, I believe, like how we charge them. So it will be based on the separate listings that someone has. So this is implying that, that one vehicle most likely would be coming for one location. So if you have one listing and it has multiple rooms within the listing, typically people are coming as a group and there'd be one vehicle. So that's what the rental unit is implying, what the listing for that short-term rental, not the amount of bedrooms, which is how code is currently written, is based on how many bedrooms are in the unit. But the revision here would just be looking at the entire listing of the unit.
I don't like that. Just saying.
1 space per rental unit. So if it were a B&B in a house, the house is considered the rental unit? So 1 space for that bedroom.
Yeah, whatever the listing is for.
And I think our B&B code is really poorly written. But can you have different parties renting different rooms in your house?
No, so it depends on how you list it, but that's what this code takes into account. That if you are separately listing those bedrooms,
Okay.
then you would have to have 1 space for each of those rental
I see.
units.
Okay.
But if your listing encompasses all of those bedrooms, so only one group can rent those 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms,
Okay.
then it would be 1 parking space for that. But if you list them as separate, then
Okay.
each of those.
That makes more sense. Thank
So,
you.
can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
I just need a little bit more clarification. So a B&B is like, you're gonna rent a room in your house, and only that room. They're not gonna cook, they're not gonna do anything else. They're only gonna sleep and use the bathroom. Those 2 things in that one room. Whereas lodging is where, this just in my mind, lodging is where they're gonna come in, they're gonna use that room, they're gonna use the bathroom, they're gonna use the kitchen, the living room, maybe watch TV. So, I guess, what is the definition of a B&B versus a place where you're gonna use the whole house?
Yeah, our code defines lodging as the broad term, and so then short-term rentals, B&Bs, which B&Bs in our code just has it where you're providing a meal to your guests, so the line between B&Bs and short-term rentals is pretty gray. It's just the difference of providing a meal versus not. But yeah, lodging in this in our code implies short-term rentals and B&Bs. They're the
Renting a
same.
house out to somebody.
Or a room. It'd be, yeah, lodging is anything, renting any portion of your home out.
And it now also includes accessory dwelling units.
Right. So yeah, renting,
As
the renting
lodging.
of any portion of your home or other dwelling on your property.
Like the hostels.
Yeah.
That would be, would the hostel be a lodging? That would be considered lodging, or under this, right?
Yep, hostels are.
So what does the commission think about 1 space per rental unit? That sound reasonable?
I do have one question though. it says spaces plural for the principal dwelling unit. What is, are you adding more spaces? You know, I would think plus a space for the principal dwelling unit, because that to me is ambiguous. Spaces, is there more than one space? Or
residential
Yeah.
dwelling is required to have 2 spaces. So if you have a B&B in your
Right.
house, you need 2 spaces for
Right.
you plus 1 place.
Right, but when it says plus spaces, that says you got the 1 space per rental unit plus spaces for the principal dwelling unit. So made me just confused, made me a little confused, like, are we having more spaces, or there more, isn't the principal dwelling unit, is there a 2 or 3 spaces, there are more rooms in the principal dwelling unit? I would prefer, just from the verbiage, is 1 space per rental unit plus a space for the principal dwelling unit, so it's very clear 1 and 1 if you're gonna require 2.
You shouldn't just say plus principal dwelling units requirements.
That would be better.
Okay,
Yeah.
that works.
Right? So
Yeah.
it's whatever the principal dwelling unit is.
The requirements are, because that, just for some reason, that was jumping out at me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so it would read 1 space per rental unit plus principal dwelling unit requirements. Right?
Yeah.
Does that read well?
Yeah, that reads, I think, a little better.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you,
can
guys.
space twice.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Vanessa.
Okay, but I'm good with that. Yeah.
Okay, so the next change is not on this page. Next change is on the next page.
Office, medical, or dental?
Right, so instead of 2 spaces per treatment room and 1 for each doctor, dentist, hygienist, or other professional practitioner on site, it'd be 1 space per treatment room and 1 for each employee on duty.
Makes sense.
I think that is reasonable. I don't know how anyone met the 2 spaces per treatment room and 1 for everybody else. That's a lot of
Yeah, it is a lot.
parking.
I was even
That's a lot of parking.
I was even gonna suggest a half a space per employee on duty. Not all people bring their cars to work.
My neighbor works at the hospital, he walks to work, just saying. A lot of people walk to work, 8 to 10% of our population.
As someone who lives quite near the hospital.
Not everybody chooses to
It's
walk,
overflowed
people
a
drive,
lot.
yes.
It's overflowing a lot. I see very few bicycles. I do see a few, but very few. That parking lot may be code, but it's not
The
adequate.
walking share is highest. The walking share is higher than the bike share.
The walking chair is higher than the...
The share,
The walking share
yes,
is higher than
the bike share
the bike share.
in the town, yes.
But why is the parking lot inadequate?
It's overflowing a lot at the hospital?
Oh, yeah. And when they have meetings, it's both sides.
Oh, just when they have meetings, but for regular daily use, it's...
The other
You're
day
saying
it
it's
was,
full.
I had to bring somebody up to Providence and I had to park on the street. I had to park across the street. I hope the people living there didn't see me. No.
Yeah, and then you go up to the new North Star Clinic and it's overwhelming amount of parking.
Well, they do
Way
most of their work away. They do a lot of remote services. But anyway, I do think 2 spaces for every doctor, dentist, hygienist, other professional is difficult. And I would go for 1 space per treatment room and 1 for each employee on duty.
I'm good with the change.
I am.
Okay. The next change is the bowling alley, which is a dream. 1 parking space for each alley plus 1 for each employee on duty.
I think you had one before that, the eating and drinking
Oh,
establishment?
you're right, eating and drinking establishment. So instead of 1 parking space per 200 square feet of gross floor area, or 1, for each 4 seats, it would say 1 parking space for each 4 seats, period.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
So how does that work when it's incorporated into a hotel? I'm just wondering, so we don't get, like a Jean's Place, for example, or I don't know if it's Jean's Place anymore. I don't know how that layers up.
I think they added to the total number, like before, we had one parking space for one room, and then if you had your little eatery down there, you had to have a different set of things for each one of those, which is a little bit...
That's where we ended up with 74 parking spaces that I needed, which is excessive.
Yeah, because a lot of those same customers are eating in the restaurant.
Right. Anyway, I don't know how to address that layering.
I think if it came before us in the Harbor Commercial or Central Business District, we could decide if we needed to add
as
more.
Conditional?
Yeah.
As it comes up?
Conditional use permit.
Is that correct? That we could?
Well, we did that.
Say
Chase
less parking, even though they had a restaurant and a bar in the hotel.
Right, in the Central Business and Harbor Commercial, you could do that, yeah.
So one for each 4 seats, just period, okay? Okay, the next one is the bowling alley. Instead of 4 parking spaces for each alley, it'd be 1 parking space, plus 1 for each employee on duty.
Wow, that was a lot of parking for a bowling alley. 4 parking spaces per alley?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot.
Although I don't think it was a conditional use downtown, and so they didn't have any parking.
Because Dreamland didn't have anything.
No, they didn't. So it's just like, why do we even have this?
Yeah.
But there it is. Yes, Kelly?
I just wanted to clarify real quick, the eating and drinking establishment in Central Business District is an outright use, so they wouldn't have to provide any parking at all, right?
Right.
I found that language, if that was something you'd want to hear.
You what?
That language for your question, Rhonda. So where a hotel or motel has other principal uses such as restaurants, bar and meeting rooms located in its premise, the principal use requiring the greatest amount of parking shall provide 100% of the required parking. So whichever one needs the most has to provide it, and then the other uses shall provide at least 70% of the parking spaces, which would be required if those were standalone uses.
So if he had 100 rooms, he'd need 50%, plus if he had a food an eating establishment, he'd need 70% of the 4-seater
Yes.
requirement.
Okay, so the bowling alley, are we good with the 1 parking space for each alley? And 1 for each employee? Are we still on that one?
Yeah, I thought we had a change though with that restaurant thing.
It just
Seemed like,
I think
Yeah,
I don't want to get caught up in the weeds here, but this is.
I do think it was discussed at a previous work session, and we've kept track of those changes, so I think we have
those
that.
out, please.
So then, on page 505 of our handout, one of the changes that I believe that we thought would work, where hotel, motel, lodge, or inn has other principal uses such as restaurants, bar, and meeting rooms located on the premises, the principal use requiring the greatest amount of parking shall provide 100% of the required parking spaces, period.
Okay, and then just forget the other stuff that you had mentioned.
Right.
Okay,
So that would
fix
make
it.
it manageable.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
That's why I wanted this, so we worked hard on that in June.
yeah.
So that's how
That's
we
good,
discussed to take care of that
Okay.
issue where
Yeah, thank
he
you.
needed a billion places. Okay, so bowling alley, in your dreams, let's go for it. Okay, nothing else on page 25, going on to the last page, 26. Could administration say why motor vehicle sales and service establishments was deleted?
Yeah, the past June work session, the commission had stated that it was not a use that would ever be here.
Okay, I didn't have that noted in my notes.
Yeah, I remember that.
But we do have service establishments, motor vehicle service establishments, or we did.
Right, so there's the service and repair shop just above it that requires parking, and then gasoline service station, which also, so there's two that would fit the,
Just seemed we were duplicating
redundant.
uses, and it was confusing
Oh,
of
that's
where
right.
something would fall
Redundant.
That's
under.
why
right, yeah.
this one was,
And is
Because it
that,
says
is that
service-
correlated in our land uses allowed table? Do we have something called motor vehicle sales and service establishments? Is it separated out?
there's auto sales, but not, I mean, not this exact wording, but,
Okay.
and yeah, not the exact combination.
Because I don't see that service or repair shop, retail store handling, bulky merchandise, machinery, furniture, wholesale stores, appliances, carpet, and showrooms. I don't see that that's the same as an auto repair shop. So I'm not sure that that's really taken care of.
We can incorporate it into the definition, because they were both 400 square feet, you know, one parking space, 400 square feet, maybe if you want to put that.
Well, I wanted to put
is
it.
this service or
what
repair
we
shop,
discussed-
retail
hang on
store
just a
handling?
sec. What we discussed at our June work session was under gasoline service stations, that we would add auto repair there. Because it said one parking space for each 2 gas pumps plus 2 spaces for each grease rack, wash rack, and
Right.
stall for servicing vehicles. That's real specific to vehicle repair. That's where we put it.
Yeah. slide
Okay,
with that.
so we can strike this motor vehicle sales and service establishments.
Yep.
Okay, and then, the last one, we struck charter boat operator's license for 20 or more people and just left day cruises, 1 parking space for 4 people, maximum capacity. And that, of course, doesn't apply in harbor commercial. But we did strike the charter boat operators. Do you want to keep that? In my Googling, I didn't find more than like 1 or 2 that were that big.
Yeah.
So this would pertain more to a private marina?
Somewhere.
Okay.
Well, as staff said, maybe in the industrial zone that could happen.
And harbor marinas are allowed in resource management, institutional, and park, so.
Harbor marinas? Okay.
With the CUP, so I mean, unlikely, but they are allowed in our land use allowed table, so.
And that's the end of that uses. I think there's some fine tuning that could be done. Some of these are inadequate, like the library, 1 space for 1,000 square feet. That library is totally inadequate for parking.
How many square feet is that?
I don't know.
It's also in central business district.
Yeah, okay. So maybe it doesn't matter.
If people quit using it, it'll matter.
And what's the difference? Gross floor area is used throughout. Does gross floor area include closets, or, I don't know, what is gross floor area as opposed to usable floor area?
Yeah, that's how I would understand it, is that, typically with like, and I don't know how it would apply to these commercial uses, but I know like for dwellings, they typically only count like the livable space for the totals, for like the square footage of the house, so garages and that sort of thing aren't usually counted. So I would imagine they say gross floor area, they're referring to the entire building So counting in stairwells, closets, whatever else you may have, yeah. So
Probably makes it easier to calculate, because it's just like, here's your rectangle, you don't have to worry about what's usable and what's not. I was just curious.
Yeah.
So, why don't we think about this and bring it back and we can discuss it some more.
Yeah, we can, with the commission, I'd like to see then the compilation of the edits that we discussed at our June 17th meeting, so which the chair brought up again tonight with the handout, as well as what we've discussed tonight in the second ordinance draft. So the full edits for the parking code.
And the staff kindly provided those work session notes.
Yes.
So we can refresh our memories.
Very good.
Does that sound good to the commission? Okay.
I have one quick question as far as, because we talk about the long-term lodging and how to wrap your head around it and stuff like this, because that does impact certain things in neighborhoods and for the families and stuff. Is there any way, are we just like victim to, people doing illegal long-term lodging things and not getting a business license or anything else like this? Is there any management, sort of like B&Bs? People still do B&Bs, I'm sure, without, the Hamari. I don't know, you still using the Hamari program?
We've switched to Granicus.
Okay.
We have a system where we can monitor short-term rentals. Anyone that has a short-term rental listing on the internet,
Yeah.
we will find out.
Yeah, but for the long-term lodging things, because that's the same thing. I mean, I'm glad there's long-term lodging, but it doesn't make sense to me why somebody wouldn't get a business license and, they're running afoul of the, the rules.
Yeah, and I think part of that, it could just be better awareness, education. I don't think long-term lodging has the same, I don't think people are trying to fly under the radar, they just aren't aware that they need a business license. But yeah, it would be harder to monitor that, where people typically don't list those necessarily on like an online platform. It's more just kind of word of mouth or...
Got a friend coming for the summer, I'll just love them with my room, they just pay me cash or Venmo, that kind of stuff, I think happens often.
Yeah.
Roommates don't count for that.
It's also not something that you guys want to crack down on, like you want people to live year-round. So there is no enforcement or no looking into it, because hopefully everybody is doing long-term rentals.
Yeah, you want to be able to do that to some extent, but I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the statistics that were provided in the graphs. And you'd like to have a clean number, what we actually do have. And I was just, trying to figure out, is there a way to nail that, or even have a ballpark on how many you think might be not running with license?
I think that's also hard because I know some of the people downtown, they have one business license for 11 units and they're renting long-term.
Right.
So I don't know how you see from the business license that that's not just for one rental, it's actually for 11.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard to nail that down for sure.
Any other questions or comments? Are you wrung out? Okay, going once, going twice. I adjourn this meeting at 8:27 p.m.
Thanks, Carol.
You're welcome.